Joe Tripodi, welcome back to Stateline. Exactly a year ago, Nathan Rees dumped you from Cabinet without reason. You were obviously distressed at that time. He got the ALP conference to give him the power as the Premier to choose the ministry. But can you acknowledge now that a few weeks later you organised the numbers to roll him as the Premier?
No, not at all. I was actually the last line of resistance and last line of support for Nathan. As all the journalists know, I was a strong defender of his premiership. Once he decided to remove me, all I did was take a step back, and it was only a matter of time.
These aren't tactical fibs you're telling us, because no. others would have done it. You're really saying that...
I was the only one that was stopping them from doing it. So
well,
there was
you weren't very effective at it.
I was while I was a minister. And then I no longer was a minister. I took a step back, and everyone else who had come to the view that it was time to review the premiership went ahead and executed what they thought was the right way forward for the party.
You're from the right faction. Explain why the right supported Nathan Rees from the left in the first place after Morris Yema's resignation over electricity privatisation.
OK, well, I won't attempt to do that because it wasn't my decision to do that. It was actually a decision I didn't necessarily support. It was a decision that was made somewhere else. So,
where somewhere else? Can you give us an insight?
Well, there was a lot of discussion within the party, and I'm only one voice. I was of the view that we should have stuck with Premier Morris Yema. And if you remember, actually myself and Eddie Obeid were just about the last two who were strongly defending Morris's premiership.
But Morris was obviously aggrieved at your position at the end. He hasn't... You've broken your friendship with Morris, haven't you?
Yeah, that's true. And Morris has a view of history and I have another view, and I was there, I know the truth.
And you say that you were loyal to him right to the last moment. But you voted for Nathan Rees, didn't you?
No, the Premier resigned.
He did, I know, but you voted for Rees then.
After that, yes.
Because he was elected unopposed.
That's right.
Can you bring yourself now, in reflection, to say, yes, you have been a power broker with Eddie Obeid in the dominant sub-faction of the right in New South Wales?
Look, that's about 1% of my work.
But I want you to acknowledge that, yes, you have been a numbers man within the party.
Well, first of all, I'd have to say, I want to remind you that, number one, I'm a member of Parliament like everyone else. I have one vote like every other member of Parliament. People have discussions about the way forward for the party, the way forward for the government. I participate in those discussions like every other member of Parliament. Then it's up to them individually to make a decision about what they're going to do. And
you clearly indicate, say, for example, we want Christine and not Frank Sartor. You clearly indicated, and on all the phone work you do, that's what happens, isn't it?
Every member of Parliament has that view, and every member of Parliament talks to other members of Parliament, as I do. Now, you know, it's suited elements within the media to give me that tag, and I think it's an injustice because everyone who knows me privately knows that the overwhelming interest that I've always had is in public policy as opposed to politics. But I learned something as a young man when I was at the Reserve Bank. I wrote a very comprehensive paper on the impact of dividend imputation on monetary policy. It was a new policy that had come in, the Keating government had introduced it. It was, I thought, cutting-edge research. I'd given it to my boss, and my boss didn't understand dividend imputation because he hadn't been to university and hadn't studied the tax laws. And it got buried in the bottom drawer. And then it made me realise that it's no point just studying about good public policy if you don't have the power to implement it. So the reality is that if you want to be an effective reformer, you need both a command of policy and you need both power and power to implement it.
Well, let's talk about effective reform and power, because you backed Morris Yema in the electricity privatisation, which split your party, the parliamentary party, from the organisational wing. Do you now acknowledge that that was a mistake, which has disconnected the Labor Party from its base?
No, not at all. It was Morris Yema was being a leader. He knew full well, being the experienced politician that he was, that it was going to be an unpopular policy. He also knew full well, being a well-educated person, it was a necessary reform for the state. And that's why he risked his leadership and his premiership to fight and try to sell that policy reform. And I was very proud to stand by him and try to execute that policy reform. And we still believe it is the right thing for the state.
But it split the party, and it's left us with Kevin 07 and the ETS federally with a huge debate in Australia about what the Labor Party stands for anymore.
That's
what
right.
does the Labor Party stand for anymore?
Well, if anything, the power debate proved that there is still passion and commitment to policy. That proved it. Now, it is fashionable at the moment to say that we're driven by spin and polling, but the reality is just 2 years ago, we had the biggest fight in the Labor Party on a policy issue. So for those who say that there's no passion and there's no commitment and there's no ideology left in the Labor Party, how wrong can they be when you look at that experience?
Mr Tripodi, the electricity consumers have just absorbed a 30% increase in power prices, the biggest ever recommended and approved by IPART, the regulator. This is a consequence of electricity policy. How can you, as a Labor person, say, well, you've got to wear it? You've got to wear it. This is the regime, this is the pricing regime which gives this cost of living increase to all your social justice supporters.
Right, but Quentin, you're intelligent enough to know that it wouldn't have mattered whether the assets were in public ownership or private ownership in terms of that price path that exists.
Do we really know that, given the investment in the poles and wires?
Emphatically. It would have made no difference, and I think you know that. So you don't need to tell me about the impact that it's having on working families. I see it every day in my electorate. I know how harmful it is. I know how difficult it is for those families. My neighbours tell them, people I bump into in the street tell me every day. We know that. If anything, if we had accelerated and implemented those privatisation reforms, we would have intensified the competition between the generators as a consequence of that reform, and that price rise probably could have been a bit less. So it could have been a bit less.
GenTrader, this is you're the architect of GenTrader. The tenders close on Monday. Do you expect, in these circumstances, with the Gillard minority government about to, in the next 12 months, do something about a price on carbon, do you really expect that we're going to get the maximum price for the output of the state-owned generators, or will we have to discount at a concessional rate, in fact, a fire sale?
Well, no. I mean, at the moment, the prospect of a carbon price has already impacted the value of those assets. Now, whether those assets are owned by the government or whether they're owned by the private sector, the prospect of those carbon price implementation has already impacted the price of those assets. So it makes no difference in terms of the value themselves.
Who's going to run the caucus numbers with you going, and we expect Eddie Obeid may well go before the election? Oh,
look, I'm not going to be involved, thankfully. I don't want to be part of it. And I wish everyone who attempts to do it the very best of luck, because it is a very difficult job.
But you're not a numbers man.
I'm not a numbers man, but I wish anyone who wants to do it the best of luck.
Finally, this week the Parliament has banned alcohol, gaming and tobacco slush fund donations to political parties. You, like many MPs, have got to become bagmen for the party, getting donations in both for your own electorate, your faction, your supporters and what have you. What do you think about bringing slush funding to an end?
Well, look, Quentin, I mean, you've got to give some credit to Premier Keneally. She is the first in the country to have been responsible for implementing these reforms, bringing in public funding of election campaigns and also capping expenditure. That's going to take a lot of pressure off members of Parliament in terms of fundraising. It adds to the prospect of their integrity and the difficulties they may have felt in their fundraising activity. And Premier Keneally has led the way on this reform. So we need to give credit to her. The previous premiers have always said, we'll wait till the federal government does something before we'll do that. Premier Keneally said, no, enough is enough. We are going to forge ahead and we are going to lead the country on this area of reform.
Mr Tripodi, do you take any responsibility for the unpopularity of the Australian Labor Party in New South Wales?
No, not at all. I mean, I've been an active member of the party, a loyal servant of the party.
You're blameless, eh?
No, I'm not blameless. No more than any other member of Parliament.
Well, to what extent has your activity within the party helped to destroy the credibility of the party, which we now see?
Well, my activity has been mostly in the area of policy reform, and I've got a very proud legacy, and I've got a very proud record in that area. And
regrets?
For those,
do you have any regrets?
Well, my only regret, and I've said this before, is I went into Parliament at a very young age. and I think that you just don't have the experience to be able to deal with the challenges that you have as a Member of Parliament. If I had my time again, I probably would have gone at 45 or 50 years old, and any young person who comes along and talks to me, I recommend that course of action.
A new maturity now.
Well, I think you do get more mature as time goes by.
You're on the jobs market. What are you going to do?
Well, look, my passion's always been finance, economics, and areas of regulation and deregulation. I hope to be able to get something in the space of policy and be able to develop in that area. But I'm on the market. I'm interested, and I look forward to my new life.
Joe Tripodi, thanks very much.
Thank you, Quentin.